Well, 185 million rand, that's the amount that could be paid in damages as a result of the fallout in the Steinhoff matter. An application has been brought in Johannesburg in addition to cases the company faces in other jurisdictions, including Germany and the Netherlands. An equivalent number, almost 187 million, is estimated to have been wiped off the value of the retailer after so-called accounting irregularities were revealed at the end of last year in what is surely one of the biggest meltdowns in South African corporate history. Well, now the Public Service Association, the largest non-politically affiliated public sector union, has joined the suit, and we're joined now by Tahir Maepa, the Deputy General Manager. Good evening to you, and thank you for your time, Tahir. I mean, firstly, how exposed was the PSA to Steinhoff?
Well, thank you very much, Bongani. The exposure of the PSA through the Government Employee Pension Fund and the money basically that belongs to the public servants, the losses there goes up to 19 billion losses. So it's quite a substantial amount of money, and that is why we are vigorously pursuing this, and we've been fighting this hard to reach to this particular point where we are today.
Of course, there have been a number of, shall we say, culprits in how this saga unfolded. But in terms of what you were able to see, what you had sight of at the time, I mean, could that much exposure, could that have been prevented?
Well, it's very difficult, Bongani, to anticipate these kinds of things. I mean, Steinhoff was the blue-eyed boy of investors in South Africa. Nobody could have thought that we could see ourselves in this particular situation. And our assessment, as you know, that we raided Steinhoff offices last year, December. And in terms of the documentation that we managed to get during that particular raid, it is clear that this thing was fraudulent. It was premeditated. It was done with intention to deceive investors. So I don't believe that institutions like PIC could have seen this, even with proper due diligence and making sure that you participate in everything that Steinhoff was involved in. It was just a huge pyramid scheme that was premeditated, and the then CEO, Marcus Jooste, he was a crooked, clever guy. He really took a lot of people for a ride, and I believe that it's something that on this one we can really say that the investors could not have seen this coming. So 19 billion rand is the figure you are giving us. Is that the PSA's exposure, or indeed are there more monies for other investors? Well, that exposure is basically exposure in terms of all public servants through the PIC. So that is only one aspect of the exposure as far as public servants are concerned. All right. So who then are the targets of the suit? Well, firstly, the suit, the target will be Steinhoff as a company itself, and obviously the directors of Steinhoff also. So it's going to be multiple suits on company level and on individual level. So basically, our view is that we need to take everybody to the cleaners, everybody who was involved, everybody who knew about this. Because like we are saying, as far as we are concerned, this was premeditated, it was planned, it was done with intention to deceive. I spoke in my introduction in terms of the value that was wiped off, the value of Steinhoff. I mean, is the money still there? Well, Bongani, clearly money was never there. We don't anticipate that we'll be able to recover all the money that we invested through the PIC, but surely we'll be able to recover some of the money. And the problem is that Steinhoff now is being sued by multiple litigants. It's going to be quite difficult. But in South Africa, you know, we have at least an advantage in a sense that bringing litigation here in South Africa, we go for opt-out class action, unlike other litigation jurisdictions such as Germany and Netherlands, whereupon it allows that there must be compensation suit as well. So here we may recover some of the money, even though I must also mention that this money, even after the recovery, is not money that will directly go back to the public servants, but it will go back into the coffers of the PIC, then it can be reinvested in other portfolios.
Right, now, how galling was it for you to discover allegations that the former CEO, Marcus Jooste, may have tipped off people who were close to him to dump the shares before, of course, all of this emerged?
Well, you know, for one, we were not surprised. During December, when the Steinhoff shares fell, one of the first things that we did basically was to make sure that we get as close as possible to the fires. And one of the things that we've discovered is that it was a total collapse of corporate governance in Steinhoff. Basically, Marcus Jooste was running Steinhoff with a clique of his buddies. And these buddies were the ones who basically he tipped off and made sure that they don't lose that much. And even himself, he claims to have lost about 3 billion. But that 3 billion is not his money. It is money that he got through Steinhoff as bonuses for concocted financial statements.
Right. I mean, you talk about this being something that was done deliberately, consciously. Of course, we know that the chairman, Christo Wiese, has consistently maintained, for example, that he could not have known and thus shot himself underfoot in the way that has happened. What's your response to that one?
Well, as far as Christo Wiese is concerned, really speaking, we don't even feel sorry for Christo Wiese. The fact of the matter is that Christo Wiese was the chairperson of Steinhoff. He had a fiduciary responsibility. His role is not different from that of Marcus Jooste. It doesn't matter that he has put money there. The fact of the matter is he was supposed to play a juristic person as far as his role as a chairperson. And he allowed a situation where the CEO basically does as they wish, and they never questioned his motives and all that. They are responsible for all this because of the reason why we have a board is to look after the assets of the investors, and he failed in that responsibility. And by law, he himself should be part of the accomplices to this whole crime. So Christo Wiese's crocodile tears to us, they mean little to nothing.
I mean, but surely, I mean, it would have been difficult because obviously we know that the books of Steinhoff had been signed off by auditors. It all looked above board. As you say, this was the blue-eyed boy of the market. Their expansion, for example, in other areas, in other territories, it all seemed to be a major success story. And given then all of those factors, how could he have known?
Well, look, if you are a chairperson of an institution, you are a chairperson of the board, you are closer to question certain things. And now, like I'm saying, in terms of their papers that we managed to get from Steinhoff, these guys, they failed in their obligation. They just believe that Marcus Jooste's word is written in gold. But whose fault is that? Because the reason why you have a board is to make sure that they ask tough questions. That was their responsibility in between AGMs of Steinhoff. So they failed in that responsibility. They broke the law by not sufficiently acting upon their fiduciary responsibility.
Tahir, I'm looking at visuals of, the appearance of Marcus Jooste before members of parliament. What did you make of how he acquitted himself there?
You know, I was sitting right behind him, and really speaking, I didn't want to miss any word that he was saying. You know, Marcus Jooste is a sly human being. You know, he managed to sway the whole argument away from him, and unfortunately, the parliamentarians, they also allowed him to get away with it. As far as that show at Parliament, I will give it to Marcus Jooste that really he managed to bamboozle those politicians there. But the fact of the matter is, he could not lie to reality. Reality is that he was the CEO. He knew about these things. He's the one who signed off all these financial statements. And he knew that the Steinhoff that he was presenting to the world is not the Steinhoff that is in existence.
There are those who argue that there's been a disproportionate interest of late, say, in the VBS matter, for example, and yet the losses in this one were far more significant.
Well, You know, that comparison, Bongani, I think it's a bit naive. You know, if you are a thief, you are a thief. It doesn't matter whether you stole 100 rand or you stole 10 billion. The fact of the matter, thieves must be dealt with. What we are saying here is that if you look at the issue of Steinhoff, yes, the proportionality, the Steinhoff one is quite scary. And I would have also expected that there would have been, especially from the media's point of view, there would have been more research and media coverage as far as that, which didn't happen more than what VBS is able. But I also understand that the Steinhoff one is a bit sophisticated. It requires, it's not an easy thing like VBS where you can just go and say money went from this bank to that bank, and it's quite complex. But indeed, I believe that the media and all the politicians and political parties, they could have made more noise about Steinhoff, which didn't happen. I'm also disappointed. But as the PSA, we actually stood our ground as far as Steinhoff is concerned, and now we are seeing the results of our hard work and our determination.
Right, we'll have to leave it there with Tahir Maepa from the PSA. 19 billion rand is what he says was the exposure of public servants in the Steinhoff